Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Happy New Year, and welcome to our first webinar of the year. For those of you that don't know me, I am Robert Bean, Managing Partner of Grimbo & Co, and I'm delighted to be hosting today's webinar on how AI is transforming the way SMEs do business. Our guest speaker is Bruce Penson, the Managing Director of ProDrive, an IT strategy, support, and cybersecurity business that works with firms in numerous sectors, helping their clients use technology to get better business outcomes. Bruce is a firm believer that technology, in particular AI, should help businesses be more productive and their employees' jobs more enjoyable. He also has the reputation for being able to translate complex tech into straightforward language that everyone can understand. I will now hand you over to Bruce, and if you have any questions, please add them to the Q&A, and time permitting, we will be able to answer them at the end. Over to you, Bruce. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Robert. Okay, so we're going to get started today by just having a quick look at where we are now with AI in business. So I'm assuming that there's some sort of knowledge of AI of people on this webinar. And if there is, I guess a lot of you are probably using what we term an AI chatbot. So the likes of ChatGPT, Copilot in the Microsoft world, which in itself is a sort of based on ChatGPT anyway. Google have the likes of Gemini, there's Bard, a whole plethora of these tools out there. And typically, obviously, you put information in or upload um, media or maybe even speak to it and get a response based on your question. But there's also a lot of development platforms out there as well now. So often these are made by the same companies as the ones that make the chatbots. So Microsoft, OpenAI, make ChatGPT. And these platforms are used principally by software companies who are developing their own kind of in software AI. But often, businesses, certainly larger businesses, they might have their own internal development, and they might be using these AI platforms as well. Where we're starting to get more use of AI is what I call in-app AI. So this might be a piece of software that you're using, and they develop an AI add-in. Microsoft call this Copilot. Those of you familiar with Sage have probably seen Sage Copilot as well. And these in-app AIs tend to sort of come in a few different forms. We have the Microsoft Copilots, which appear in all the Microsoft apps. As I mentioned, other kind of line of business apps like Sage or whatever might be relevant to your business. A lot of those apps are now coming with their sort of AI helpers, AI tools. But there's now a lot of what tend to call productivity applications out on the internet. So a lot of them sit in the sort of media areas, the creative areas, so video generation, presentations, and they're all built around a kind of a core sort of AI offering. So a good example of that is a product out there called Canva, which is quite popular. This is where we're kind of seeing AI in use primarily at the moment in businesses. In terms of the future, I'm certainly not going to make any predictions sitting here. And I think even those people with a lot of knowledge around AI who work in the AI industry, they say that the pace of change is very, very quick here. So it's difficult to make predictions. What we can say is what we're seeing in that it's already having quite an impact on certain businesses. I know, for example, the legal sector, AI is very good where there's lots of words. And obviously there is in the legal sector, and we're already starting to see quite a lot of impact around that area and changes in the way people are doing business. So that's certainly going to happen, whether it's going to lead to mass job losses or whatever that some of the sort of predictions that are out there or not in the near future. It's really, I think, probably too early to say. So let's take a quick look on some good reasons as to why you should adopt AI in your business. Um, Firstly, everyone obviously talks about automation, um, replacing staff potentially, or doing stuff cheaper, that kind of thing. Um, I'll talk about some other benefits of AI in a minute. So actually, I think the other benefits are even more important than that one, but we can't start without talking about that. And I call that the quantity of work, because simply put, AI allows you to process in the right circumstances, process information, data quicker than you'd be able to do without it. And that allows you to do more for the same amount of money, maybe more for less. And if you're using it to do that and your competitors aren't, it allows you to get ahead of the competition. It can also help with, margins, pressure on margins, things like inflation, salaries, national insurance, maybe, talking point recently. So, and it can help you scale quicker as well if you're a small business. But as I say, I think that's probably everyone knows about that. But what I want to focus more on, the other 3 points I've got on the slide here. So the quality of the work. So using AI can actually give you a step up in the quality of what you're able to deliver. And why is that important? Well, we probably all know that client expectations are always continually shifting, and people expecting more for less. And I think it's driven a lot as well now by the changes we see in the consumer world. So now you can get an Amazon app out and order something, and it arrives the same day. So that shift in consumer expectations, people then go to, when it's a sort of a B2C environment, and they're maybe approaching a professional advisor. And they expect a different type, more instantaneous service. So AI will allow us to try and sort of bridge that gap, potentially offer things that we might not be able to offer before as well. And moving on to people. So as mentioned earlier, a lot of people, there's a lot of sort of talk about AI replacing people, but actually I think it's more useful to think of it in a different way as AI enhancing what people can do. So first thing I've got on here is shortening digital skills gap. What I mean by that is that people have got a lot of technology that they use in business at the moment. Just if you give them the Microsoft Office suite, they're probably only using about 10 to 15% of the capability of that software, simply because no one trains them on the other stuff. They don't need to know the other stuff really to do their jobs. And some of the other stuff's quite complicated to learn, and they might not have the skills to use that. Whereas AI can actually remove that complexity, because if you're asking software to do things by essentially speaking to it, you don't have to know how to write a complex formula or click a sequence of 20 buttons or whatever it might be. So AI can help people use those functions that they might not have used in the past. Um, and actually, this means that you can give your business additional skills as well. So there's a really big advantage for you there. And finally, business culture. The new workforce, graduates these days, they're already using this sort of technology in university. So having this tech available will allow you to recruit some of uh, the highest performers that are coming out of those environments. But also by allowing your staff to avoid having to do the boring, repetitive work, because AI can do that, they're going to be more motivated as well. They're going to enjoy their jobs more, which will be better for you as a business. So I'm going to go do some demos in a minute, but before I do that, it wouldn't be right for me to move on without at least giving a few cautions around use of AI. I don't want everyone to leave this webinar, go flying off and doing loads of funky AI stuff and upsetting their IT departments. So first thing, hallucinations. AI can give false results. If any of you seen the news the last few days, you probably see that Apple's new AI add-in for their iPhones has started generating false news articles. So big warning there. Data privacy, AI learns from everything you feed into it, in theory. And therefore, you've got to be very careful what you put in and what tools you use. Really importantly, what plans for those tools you use. Do you have a plan that gives you data privacy? So always check the terms and conditions before you start using stuff, and be very, very aware of what you're doing with it. Quality of the data. So, if you put rubbish into AI, you're going to get rubbish results. So get your data in order before you start using it. Be careful of copyright, particularly if you're using it for generating, things from marketing, media, that kind of stuff. AI doesn't really know what's copywritten material or not. There's quite a few court cases going on at the moment around it. So be careful on that. Uh, Now, wasted investment. So a lot of firms think that they've got to have an AI project now. There's no point having an AI project for the sake of an AI project. Make sure that if you're intending to use AI, you understand what you're using it for. You've got a good case. You've worked out a return on investment for doing it. It's very easy to start building AI vanity projects. And once you start building AI at any form of scale, then it does cost a lot of money. AI engineers are very, very expensive at the moment. So you can easily end up with you know, uh, very expensive vanity project. The final one, bit of an elephant in the room, this, but AI is very energy intensive. So the data centers running it churn through absolutely stacks of power, generate lots of heat. And I think I've heard that a ChatGPT query is something like 5 times as CO2 intensive as a Google query. But often when you use AI, you do thousands and thousands of queries almost at once. So this can really build up. And in theory, AI is cloud computing. It should come under Scope 3 carbon emissions. I don't know how many people are reporting it as that at the moment. It seems to be conveniently glossed over in my view, but that might be something for the future to think about. So with that in mind, I'm going to move on to some demos. So I'm just going to stop this presentation. Oops, sorry. Um, we will move on to later on to some Q&A, by the way. So if you do have any questions, please save them, pop them in the Q&A, and we'll come to them at the end. So just let me share my screen. So, we're going to start off looking at ChatGPT. So, I guess a number of you are probably familiar with this. Um, so, what I want to show you is just a couple of demos using. So, I guess most of you have probably looked at use ChatGPT to, rewrite something as if it was written by Mozart or whatever that kind of thing. But I was actually going to show you some picture analysis here and how useful this can be in a business scenario. So what we're going to do is just ask ChatGPT a couple of questions about some pictures. So if you just bear with me a second. So this first scenario, so I'm trying to align these to kind of potential business scenarios. So this one, imagine you're a law firm, client came to you, asked to write a letter before action to one of your tenants because you'd reported some property damage and you'd given them some photos of the damage. And so you're a sort of paralegal writing this up. So I've uploaded there, and you'll see it in a bit larger in a second, a picture of a trash department. And I've asked ChatGPT to review this picture of the apartment. It's been poorly looked after. I've given it some context. So I'm a lawyer acting on behalf of the landlord. And I've asked it to itemize the damage and give it to me in bullet points so I can put it in a letter. So let's see what happens there. So you can see the picture up there. Looks a bit like a student apartment, but we'll see what ChatGPT has to say about it. So we can see now it's already coming up with some analysis here. So obviously this is a potential time saver here. You wouldn't necessarily copy and paste this directly into a letter, but you've got the basic start of it here, and it might even pick up some things that you've missed as well. You could, I've tried this, I'm not going to do it online, but you could ask it to give you a lot more detail as well. It will do that, but it does take a bit longer to churn that out. So I'm not going to do that whilst we're on the webinar. So I've now got this is a real world one that we've used at ProDrive. So ProDrive, an IT company, one of the things we have to do sometimes is do audits at clients and go into their server rooms. And if any of you have seen a server room, there's lots of racks full of flashing equipment with flashing lights, cables all over the place. It's a bit of a nightmare, but we have to document all of that. So we've got schematics of all those systems for our team if we're providing any sort of remote sort of support or services to them. It's a really time-consuming job, and no one likes doing it. However, we are going to ask here for ChatGPT. Again, you'll see the picture again in a bit more detail when I submit this. So review the rack and equipment, and what I want to know is the category of each bit of equipment, the make and model, and the order it appears in the rack. And server racks have something called a U position, so it's like little blocks of three mounting holes all the way up. So, and I've asked it to be presented in a table. So let's see what happens. And this is a real game changer for our business. I guess anyone who works in an area where you have to, document visual assets, this kind of thing can be really, really useful. So you can see ChatGPT now, it's creating a table and we're getting there slowly. So this actually hasn't worked particularly well here, which is a bit frustrating because I did this one for the demo earlier. Let's give it one more go. Dangers of live demos with AI. So we'll see if that works any better. Whilst that's going through, I'll just give you a couple of tips as well. So the ChatGPT service, it's also available as a mobile phone app. And one of the ways I use this a lot in personal life is for getting information on things. So a couple of examples here. So doing some gardening, had a diseased plant, didn't know what to do with it. Took a photo of the leaves and asked ChatGPT what to do with it, and it told me what it thought was wrong with the plant, and it also gave some advice about how to deal with it. So I think, unfortunately, this demo does not seem to be working particularly well today. So this does occasionally happen with ChatGPT, unfortunately. So maybe we'll come back to that one later. Another example I've used it for as well, sorry, so that going back to the phone app is we're clearing my partner's grandma's house out a year or so ago. There was a really old bottle of champagne in there. I'm sure it was vinegar, basically, and we're going to throw it away, but photographed it and said to ChatGPT, well, is this worth anything? ChatGPT replied, well, the champagne itself is totally worthless, but these bottles are actually quite collectible as long as they've not been opened. And it actually gave us someone who could value it. So we contacted them, got it valued, sent it over to them, and they paid £50 for it. Not massive amount of money, not going to be rich from it, but it's better than throwing it away in the bin. So, right. So I'm going to move on now to Microsoft 365. Hopefully I'll have more luck looking at the demos on here. So Microsoft Teams, as you see on the screen now, this is one of the areas that we see the most use of AI in Microsoft 365. Now, Microsoft call their AI in Microsoft 365 Microsoft 365 Copilot. It is a paid add-on, about £200 a year per person, I believe, on top of your Microsoft 365 license, but you get some really good functionality, and I'm going to show you a little bit of that now. So the most common use is in transcribing meetings. So I've got a meeting here that we had, I'll go to this one actually, a few days ago. This is an internal meeting. So the meeting's being recorded, but what you see on the right-hand side here is the AI summary. So essentially what Copilot has done here, Copilot's being Microsoft's AI, it's transcribed the meeting. So there's a full transcript of the meeting there. But then it's created an AI summary from the meeting. So it's got all the sort of key things that were discussed. And where there's a lot of detail on them, you can break that down to sort of subheadings as well. So really useful if you want to go back to anything that you're talking about in the meeting, you can't quite remember what was discussed, you want to refer to the notes, or if you missed the meeting, you can catch up on what was discussed by going through these AI notes. The other useful aspect as well is at the end of it, you can see all the actions that were recorded during the meeting. So it's just like having a professional meeting note taker there, scribing the notes, but it's done for you automatically by Copilot. One other neat trick is you can actually ask questions about the meeting. So if I go in to the Copilot screen there, You can see I've actually done this before, but I'll re-enter the prompt just so you can see it happening. So I'm just asking a question. This is an IT related question, but it's given me the correct answer there, but also it's given me the point in the transcript where that was discussed. So, and it was actually me talking about it. So I'm sure if you have a lot of Teams meetings internally in your business, that would be a real time saver, but also allows you to concentrate on the meeting because you don't need people taking notes all the time. Also, let me just close this. If you create a new meeting in Teams, so that's a new Teams meeting screen. By the way, there, if you're creating meetings, this is the switch. If you've got Copilot enabled to turn on the AI notes. But you can add an agenda now, and this is when people join the meeting, they get access to this. So you can do this without Copilot, but if you want to use Copilot so you need a license to do this next bit, but you can use Copilot to help create you an agenda. So what we can do is if we wanted to have a meeting to discuss how we're going to create a Copilot project plan, we can ask Copilot to do that. And I've asked Copilot for a suggested agenda and it's given me one. So again, I could play around with that, keep what I need. And then when people join the meeting, they've already got the agenda there. So that covers Teams. Hopefully that's given you a few good ideas on what you should do. So I'm going to move now on to Microsoft Excel. So this, I think, is probably one of the areas where Copilot offers I was talking earlier about the shortening digital skills gap. Well, Excel, as a lot of us know, can be quite complicated. Doing basic Excel, no problems. Formulas, complex formatting, creating different types of chart can be quite time consuming. So Copilot can really help on this. So if we're in Excel and we open the Copilot window at the side here, one of the first things we can do is just ask questions about our data. So let me start a question there. Which products do I make the most money from? So this is a load of sample data about some sort of consumer goods, or I think it's actually foods, that kind of thing. There's quite a few rows on it. There you go. So immediately it's told us that we make the most money from carrots. And it gives us some other suggested prompts as well. So we could say that if we wanted to know the city with the total high sales. So let's go on there. And we've got that too. So what it's created there is actually a new chart. So we can add that to a new sheet. And there you go, you've got that analysis there. You also probably saw at the beginning, you've got some other options as well. So understand, apply formatting, that kind of thing. So if we click on understand, it will summarize the data as it seems fit using some pivot tables. So again, we could add that into to a new sheet as well if we wanted to. So I'm going to go on to formatting now. So conditional formatting, I find, can be a bit of a pain sometimes. A simple conditional format is really easy, but where you've got multiple formulas in there, it can get a bit messy and take a bit of time to do. So what I'm going to ask Copilot to do is to format this unit price column here. So it's green, it's above average, and if it's red, if it's below average. So I could probably figure that out in conditional formatting. I might need to do a couple of Googles just to work it out, but let's see how we get on with Copilot. Hopefully it won't let me down. So there you go. So what it's done, it's returned there what it thinks we're asking it to do. And if we like the look of that, we can apply it. And there you go. So that's straight into Excel. We've got our conditional format there. So you can see probably how that you could use that for some really quite complex conditional formatting as well. So let's move on to formulas. Now I'm going to ask for Copilot to do a relatively simple formula. So what I'm asking here, just so you can see in the corner here is basically I want to create a new column, and I want to segment the quantity here. So we've got A if it's over 200, B if it's over 100, C less than or equal to 100. So we're segmenting this data basically. So let's ask it to do that. There we go. So Copilot has given us the formula that it's using or suggesting to use, but it's also giving us the option of entering that new column straight into the spreadsheet there. So we should do that. And there we go. So that was a fairly simple formula, but now I'm going to push this one step further. So you'll see here I've already got a little table for food category. So what I'm going to do now is ask Copilot to look up this segment letter in this table and create a new column based on the result. So we shall paste the prompt in there. So look up column segment in table segment. So that's table segment. Create a new column called description and populate it with the value from the column description in table segment. So it's going to return whatever is the matching field from there in a new column, match it against this segment. So let's try that. So this is what's known as a lookup formula, and they're notoriously tricky to write. Although any accountants on the call will probably be familiar with these. So there you go. It's given us the X lookup. Insert the column, and hopefully, as you'll see, if I go to the top, there you go. So it's matched those correctly. So that's working on kind of what I call structured data in Excel. And there's all sorts of other examples you can do of this. There's actually some further developments coming on Excel with structured data fairly soon, which will quite exciting. Excel can also, Copilot in Excel can also look at unstructured data. So taking a bit of a risk here because I've basically downloaded about 4 years worth or 3 years worth of customer service feedback out of our system at ProDrive. I'm going to ask some questions around it. So let's Copilot again. So obviously the feedback, as you can see here, it's all sort of written feedback. So say very much unstructured data. So what we'll do is just ask a really generic question to Copilot at the beginning. Please give me a summary of this feedback. Now, I probably wouldn't do this normally on 4 years worth of data or old data. I'd do it on, last 3 to 6 months. But what I want to show you is that how well Copilot can process this really large amount of data you've got on the screen here. This is where I hope I get something positive. Takes a little bit longer, of course, because there's more data here. Oh, here we go. We've got a response already, so that's good. So look, I've got some really good feedback here, positive feedback, and it's correctly identified, by the way, because I didn't tell it which column to look at, but this is the column that's got the data in it that has the feedback, and it's correctly identified that. So there you go. Positive feedback, areas for improvement. We all need that. That's the stuff that we can learn off. Specific staff. So there's picked up on a couple of recurring issues. So they're all the things that we really want to know about when we're reviewing feedback data. So we can also ask some more specific stuff about it as well. So let's ask how many calls are made by each survey method or caller. See if we can get that information out. And there you go. It's giving me a nice little chart there. So I can add that in and I can see who's been making all the feedback calls. So what we do at ProDrive is we call people personally to get their feedback. So that's why you can see that information in there. So you go, unstructured data in Excel. So really, really neat feature if you're particularly for analyzing surveys. Okay, so I'm going to switch back now to a chatbot. So this is the Copilot chatbot. So very, very similar to the ChatGPT one you saw earlier. Except if you've got Microsoft 365 Copilot, you have this web work tab up here. So work means it can analyze your work data, so data that you store in SharePoint and OneDrive. Web means it works in the same way as ChatGPT earlier, so information it knows from the web or anything you upload to it. So I'm going to use the web mode now. You don't need a Copilot license for this, only a standard Microsoft 365 license, if anyone's wondering. Now, the scenario I'm going to use here is you get sent some kind of new agreement. You sign up to a new supplier, might only be a very small amount of money you spend with them, and they send you 10, 15 pages of terms and conditions. You haven't really got time to read it. You're certainly not going to send it to a lawyer for such a small supplier. It might just be a small web service you're using. And probably normally people would just sign them on with it, which is a bit dangerous because you don't know what you're actually signing for. But what you can do is use chatbot. So I'm going to use this reseller agreement here. And you can really sort of shortcut this process. So I am just remove that because I've done this before. I'm just going to ask Copilot, please can you review this reseller agreement and let me know anything I need to be aware of. So if I was going to do this in the real world, I might give it some more context and tell Copilot a little bit about my business first as well. A tip for you, if you use these kind of chatbots a lot, save somewhere on a Word document a summary of your business, what you do, what's important to you, that kind of thing, and just include that at the beginning of each of your prompts and just say to Copilot, ChatGPT, or whatever you're using, this is about me. Now, can you do this? And then it gives it the context it needs to know. So there you go. You can see it's reviewed this agreement, which is, there you go. It's probably just on the screen there. So there's quite a lot of text in that agreement. Oops, we've got it now down to sort of one page that I can review, and it's given me some important considerations at the end there. But actually, really, what I'm most interested in is whether I have to give any indemnities as part of this relationship. So I can just ask Copilot that question, and there you go. Very specifically, it's pulled out all the indemnities that I need to give as part of the agreement. So again, I'm not advocating this as an alternative to using a lawyer. If you've got that sort of agreement that you know that is that valuable, means that much, and I wouldn't use AI to shortcut that. But in cases of where you might not actually bother checking terms and conditions at all, this is a really good way of making sure that there's nothing lurking in there that you're signing up to that you shouldn't be. Okay, so we are now going to move to Microsoft Word. Now, what I've got here is, I'll just show you, a sample set of company accounts. Now, this could be any kind of technical document. In this case, it's an accounting document, but think of whatever your business does, and you might have technical documents that your clients don't understand, but you need to summarize them. In this case, I'm taking the sort of scenario of an accountant that needs to summarize some accounts that they've just finished for their client. But in our case, it could be a technical document because we're an IT company, but you get the idea. So writing an executive summary does take a bit of time, but this is something that AI is very good at doing. So if we go into Word and we open Copilot in Word, so I'm going to give Copilot a bit of context here. So I'm just going to say, sorry, that's the wrong prompt. So I'm going to ask Copilot to translate this financial statement into a summary, plain language, that a business person who's director of a small business but not an accountant or someone with financial qualifications can understand. So I'm just going to reference that set of accounts there. And get it to generate that. So in no time at all, we have got a 2-page executive summary of those financial statements. So as I say, again, you could apply this to any kind of technical document you like. So really big time saver doing executive summaries. But actually where Word is also really useful, so I'm just going to remove that, is in creating new documents based on existing documents. So as in multiple existing documents. So I'll go back to the one that I did paste in just a second ago, accidentally. So I've given Copilot a scenario here. So Copilot's an operations, data and compliance person, UK accounting firm, and I want to create a document for safe usage of AI. And I've got an existing document, which is an IT systems usage policy, and I've nicked some sample AI policy off the internet. And so I want it to create a new document in the format of my existing policy, but using the content in the AI policy that I've downloaded, and a little bit more information on it. So I'm just going to delete and actually refer to these documents properly. So Copilot can do this. And let's see. Right, okay. So we'll generate this. Now, it's not quite good enough to follow the exact format of the original document. So it's actually followed the pretty much the formatting of my original document, but it hasn't got the kind of the logos in and the same sort of formatting in there. But the actual structure of the document is exactly the same. So here we go. We've got an AI usage policy. It follows the format of my IT policy. So here's the IT policy document, by the way, just so you can see if it's followed that same approach. And the sample AI policy that I had was this one. So we've got our new document now. And again, I wouldn't advocate just putting your logo on this and signing it off as a policy, but it's a really great starting point for writing something. And I think most people, when they're writing these policies, procedures, that kind of thing, the starting point is the most difficult part of it. If you've got something you can work with and modify, that's much, much easier to do. So just finally, I'm going to show you two really neat little features. So we're going to just look at OneDrive here. So that's set of accounts I showed you earlier. I've got another set where I've altered a few numbers in it. Now we can use Copilot here to compare two files. So this is a really quick sort of time-saving hack. If you've got a couple of documents, you don't know what the difference is between them. And there you go, it's picked up where I've edited some numbers. So that's really neat that you do that through OneDrive at the moment, but that functionality will be rolling out throughout Microsoft 365 soon. Now, the final thing I'm going to show you before we open up for questions is using Copilot to query your own business data. So to give you a scenario here, I'm going to talk about policies and procedures. This is a ProDrive policies and procedures folder in SharePoint. But I don't know if you've been in this situation, but you've got relatively new people in the business, or it could be people who have been there many years, and they keep asking you questions about things which you know are in your policies and procedures folders. You just think, why can't they just read those? And they're asking you because they don't want to take the time to read them. It's just a shortcut to try and save them time. But ultimately, it costs you time. And some cases, I don't know if this has happened to any of you, you end up reading the policy yourself because you don't want to get caught out by giving the wrong information. So you have to worry about that no longer because Copilot can do that for your staff. You can create what's called an agent. So let's create an agent for ProDrive's policies and procedures. So we click on the bar and it's done just like that. We've got an agent. So you can share this, by the way, in Teams or an email or various other ways. And so now we've got our agent. Let's say I was wondering what to do with a large item of rubbish in the office I need to get rid of. So I'll just ask our agent that, and let's see what happens. There you go. So it's clearly talking about ProDrive, export house is office building we're in. So it's told us what we need to do, taking that to loading bay, told us where to find the high visibility vests we need, and it's given us a reference. It's in the office handbook. And another one, probably one that you might get from new starters. What's the process for requesting holiday? So we ask that, and there we go. We're getting a step-by-step summary now. And again, it will give us a reference at the end. There you go. I don't know why it's referenced the environmental policy. That's clearly AI going wrong there, but hopefully it would actually take us to the right document. Yes, it would. So I'm sure you can probably see really good uses for this now. You get asked those questions, you just say, ask the policies and procedures agent. And just to show you how these sort of things appear in Teams, we use one at ProDrive for information security. So we've got our information security agent, or it's a co-pilot there because I reached the character limit when I typed it in. You can see how I've done some demos on this before. What's our password policy? And this is an agent, just like the one I showed you, but it only refers to our information security policies and procedures. And again, references those documents there. So really great use of AI, and one I think that you can probably hopefully immediately see some uses for. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen now. I can see we've got a question that's come in already. What I'll do is I'll just put the there. So where are we then? So first question I've got here is can other users of the Excel document see the Copilot chat history when they look into the spreadsheet? So no, they can't, as far as I know at the moment. I believe that the Copilot experience within the apps in Microsoft 365 is for the person using the document only. What you can do, however, is in the Copilot chatbot window that I showed you, so where I was doing that demo earlier with the analyzing the terms and conditions. In fact, I'll show you this live on the screen now, so just bear with me a second. Yeah, so this is quite useful to know. So if you're using Copilot chat to ask questions, you can click this button here called Editing Pages. So if I did that there, it then puts it onto basically like a notepad. And that notepad then, I can share that with colleagues. They can then see anything that gets added to this notepad. They can write comments on it, whatever it might be. And then if I've got more content from Copilot that I want to put on there, I can add it to there as well. So you can see that. And I can actually just type on this as well if I wanted to. But this I can share with colleagues and they can all live collaborate on it. So it's not quite what you're asking for in Excel. It can't do that, but it is a good way of sharing AI generated content that you're working on. Okay, any more questions?
I've got hi, Bruce. Do you need an Copilot license for the agent software? The
Yeah.
agent side of things.
So yeah, just to clarify what's required then. So there are some license requirements from Microsoft. So if you want to use the AI within the Microsoft apps, so that's Team, Excel, Word, or to refer to data that you're holding in SharePoint, you do need a Microsoft Copilot license to access that functionality. And it's about £200 per person per year, I believe. Um, so seems like quite a lot of money because it might even be £300 actually thinking about it. So it's a lot of money because it's more cost essentially than a Microsoft 365 business license anyway. But you know, when you see the potential for what it can do, if a senior person's using that and they save a huge amount of time just on a few Teams meetings, then it's almost probably paid for itself. So you have to take it in that context, really, and that's why Microsoft have it at that sort of price point. If you just want to use Copilot within the web chat and you're not referring to your internal data, you can still upload files if you want to it. So essentially, it's working in the same way as ChatGPT. You only need a Microsoft 365 license for that. So any Microsoft 365 license will give you access to that. Why is that different to ChatGPT? Well, if you go to ChatGPT and you're not on a Teams plan, so there's various paid for plans, but you have to be on a Teams plan to get any sort of privacy guarantees on the information you're entering. If you use Copilot as a web chat with a Microsoft 365 license, you get that same sort of privacy guarantee. So rather than going and paying, I think it's about £40 a month minimum for the ChatGPT license, if you've already got a Microsoft 365 license, you get the same sort of equivalence by using Copilot in a chat window. Yes, it's possibly not quite as powerful as ChatGPT because it is usually kind of one sort of iteration behind on the AI engine. But I think for most businesses, it'll probably do what they need it to do.
Brilliant. Thank you. I don't think there's any more questions. So thank you so much for your presentation. Thank you everyone for attending, and yeah, see you later in the year for another webinar. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Everyone, thanks, Robert.